All right, everybody, it finally happened. Glock has finally dropped the Gen 6. The big question is, did Glock actually listen to us this time as the customers, or are they just making it harder to customize? Today, we're going to go over what's new, what Glock has changed, what they left the same, and what it all means for you if you're thinking about picking up a Gen 6. So let's jump into it. What's up, everybody? Justin here. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we cover firearm updates, parts, customizations, installs, and product breakdowns. So if you're interested in any of that, hit that subscribe button. So let's jump into the Gen 6, and everything at Glock has changed and it hasn't really changed. Glock Gen 6 feels more like Glock saying, all right, guys, listen, we heard the complaints, we've seen the issues, we've watched the firearms industry just completely explode, and they're trying to respond. But unfortunately, by the way they responded, in my personal opinion, I think it's going to split Glock fans right down the middle. Right out of the box, honestly, you can see the frame. Glock has always been working on the ergonomics of these frames right from the start from Gen 4 and 5, but Gen 6 is going to push that a little bit further. The grip texture is a lot more refined, but it's still Glock. It's definitely locked in a lot better than the older gens. If you're someone like myself that enjoys having a grip texture or adding a little stippling to the frame, the Gen 6 actually reduces the need for that. So let's take a look at the controls. So Glock's been improving the usability little by little, and the Gen 6 feels like they're targeting a smoother handling right out of the box. Whether it's the slide stop lever, the mag release, or just the tolerances or overall feel in general, it is definitely a cleaner experience. So let's talk about the slide and optics compatibility. We've seen Glock embrace optics more and more with the MOS models, but with the Gen 6 is clearly designed around the fact that, and the reality that red dots are not a trend anymore, and that they are more of a standard on any pistol. So big question comes is that, did Glock do this in a way that actually helps the user, or is it in a way that actually forces us to have to use their optic system? All right, so the biggest question you always get about it when a new firearm comes out is, what is the trigger like? So if you shot a Glock long enough, you know what a Glock trigger feels like. The Gen 6 is clearly tuned around the fact that it's going to be a lot more of a consistent trigger. It's going to feel more refined and a lot more crisp of a break. And I'll say this, some Glock fans are going to love it, and some are going to hate it because it's less Glock-like. What do you guys think? The biggest changes are actually inside. So in a second, I'm going to break down and show you what is going on with the internals, because that's where Glock has either made things better or they complicated it. Now here's where things get interesting, and honestly where the video is going to matter the most. The Glock is the king of the aftermarket support, and honestly one of the main reasons why people buy them. So when Glock changes a generation, we all ask the same thing. Did they make it better for the end user, or did they change things in a way that just makes it harder for companies than customers to customize it? Because a small design change can mean a certain backplates don't fit, triggers aren't cross-compatible, the frame shape changes, so that means magwells and other frame accessories will need new versions. And that impacts everyone, not just the hardcore Glock fans. All right, so quick question for you. Did Glock listen to its customers on this gen, or are they just trying to make it harder to customize? Drop your comments right now, because I know people are going to have their opinions and their takes on this generation. Now let's get into the teardown. Going to dismantle it and talk through parts as we go. After that, we'll talk about what I like about it, don't like about it, and whether the Gen 6 is worth it compared to a Gen 5. All right, before we break it down, let's take a look at this Gen 6. So first thing you're going to notice is that grip texture. That frame is honestly a huge improvement to me. The overall feel, the ergonomics, everything about this Gen 6 frame is a real huge plus to me. So next thing you want to point out is that flat face trigger. So what I'm going to do is make sure my firearm's unloaded, and I'll show you guys. So that flat face trigger right there is really going to give you that nice crisp pull. And honestly, as you can see there, there's no mush to it. It has a nice clean break, nice crisp feel to it. Again, huge plus in my opinion. So let's take a look at the slide itself. So first thing you want to do is I'm going to pull that slide back. You're going to use one finger to hold the slide serrations, the other thumb wrap around the beaver tail. Take your two front fingers, push down that takedown lever, let go of the slide, and it's going to come right off. So as we take the slide off, you're going to notice that in the Gen 6, they went back to that single piece guide rod, like they did in the Gen 3 style. And honestly, I'm glad they actually went back to the Gen 3 style. All right, you're going to take that barrel out. Next thing I want to point out is the biggest change, that rear plate. So like in the V series, what they actually did, as you can see here, we're going to push down that firing pin sleeve, push that rear plate off. And like I said, as in the V series, they added that rear plate that has the little notches to it. Really, again, we don't know the true reason why they did this, just the fact of they say to deter people from using a switch, but we all know how that ended up. So moving on, On the Gen 6, the newest thing they did is actually, instead of having a rod that goes from your extractor all the way to the end of the slide, for the depressor, they actually made a stationary part that has a little spring and a nub inside of here that forces the extractor to eject the casing. So how you're going to remove that is what you're actually going to want to do is remove your firing pin. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your Glock tool. You're going to see a little tiny hole behind your depressor plunger there. You're going to push into it. Once you hear that click, you know that spring is compressed. Then what you're going to do is push down on your plunger there to remove your extractor, and then that's going to allow your plunger to slip out. Then what you're going to do is remove your Glock tool, and all you're going to do is just going to push out that little, you're just going to slide it to the front and push it right out. As you guys can see there, that is the whole setup. That little spring, what it does is this nub pushes on that spring, gives it tension to push the extractor to allow that to eject the casing. All right, so now we're taking a look at the slide again. They added those same ramps they did on the V series to again deter people from using a switch. They narrowed the firing pin channel here. And really that's the biggest changes they did to the slide, other than the fact that they have these nice deep serrations in the front and the back. You have an optics plate that's a little bit different now. But that's really it with about the Gen 6 slide. Moving on to the frame. Again, I've already pointed out the ergonomics of the frame in general, just that grip texture. They stayed with the same Gen 5 extended slide release. Stayed with the locking block. The takedown lever is the same. They did change the pin kits. We will need a Gen 6 specific pin kit. They used the same trigger housing they did in the V series with the metal little nub in the back to again deter a situation of people having some fun. But other than that, really, it's the same. So that's really just the breakdown of this Gen 6. Again, I'd love to know what you guys think about it. All right, everybody, so that is it with the Gen 6. If you guys like this breakdown, remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one.